Speedrunner0218 challenged me to a solo Pokemon race of Slowbro. The thing is, it's not going to be just like any Pokemon Blue race. We're going to be playing the same game, but a different generation. I'll be playing a game of Pokemon Blue, and he'll be playing a game of Pokemon Leaf Green. The rules would be simple. We both start the game with a Slowbro, and replace Bulbasaur for consistency. We both pick Slowbro because we don't have any experience with this Pokemon, and it should give him the best shot of being able to beat me. From there, all we have to do is beat the game by the fastest means possible, but without the use of items or other Pokemon. What's a race with nothing at stake though? So we came up with the terms, and the winner gets to choose a solo Pokemon challenge for the loser to make a video on. If I win, he has to play Smeargle in Leaf Green, which is famous for only being able to copy a move from an opponent with Sketch, and then permanently keeping that move until it learns Sketch again every 10 levels. But if he wins, I have to play Ditto in Blue, which is obviously famous for copying the opponent's Pokemon for the remainder of the battle. Both equally brutal challenges, so we really don't want to lose. But before we get started, we need to get familiar with Slowbro, especially the differences between the generations. When we take a look at the base stats, it's immediately obvious that they're not exactly the same. In Generation 2, the special stat became Split, and the original special stat became either Special Attack or Defense. In this case, the original 80 became Defense, and Special Attack got buffed to 100. But it's pretty clear that from the stats of this Pokemon, that it was given extremely high HP in Defense because it was meant to be a defensive Pokemon, on account that its speed will all but guarantee it goes second every battle. But in Generation 3, Slowbro gains a few weaknesses it didn't have to worry about in Generation 1. First being the new weakness in Dark type, which is pretty self-explanatory. It was introduced in Gen 2 to fight how overpowered Psychic type was. And the second is Ghost type. Ghost type was in Generation 1, but due to a coding error, Psychic was actually immune to Ghost types. Not that it mattered anyways, because the only Ghost type move in the game is Lick, and we already know just how good that move is. His Slowbro will also be given an ability and nature, giving him an advantage that could possibly help. The nature he chose was Brave, which is an increase in attack and a decrease in speed. Being one of the slowest Pokemon in the game, it's not a big deal to reduce your speed further than it already is. But he also predicts that Slowbro is going to have a lot of early game struggles that it needs to rely on physical moves for, so he decided that the extra attack might help him get through with fewer resets. And the ability he chose was Own Tempo, which prevents Slowbro from being confused, which should help greatly for Agatha. And with that, it's time to get started. Speedrunner typically always names his Pokemon Speed, and his battle with Charmander is obviously going to be easy. But the thing to note here is that unlike Blue version, Oak interrupts the battle to teach the player how to battle a bunch of times. As for me, I take the advice of chat and name my Slowbro Brosidon. It's a cool play on words if you get the reference. Meanwhile, the opening rival battle is easier for me because my Slowbro starts with Confusion while his only started with Tackle. Now, due to my great moveset and how easy I defeated the opening rival battle, I decided that maybe I should consider battling the optional rival battle. So I head over to the optional rival to see how that's gonna go. Pidgey and I exchange blow for blow with Confusion and Gust, but Pidgey manages to deal a surprisingly large amount of damage. When we get to Charmander, we only have 11 HP left. After this first turn, it becomes obvious that I'm going to lose. Luckily, he uses a Growl to get me by the extra turn that I need for the win. Meanwhile, speedrunners manage to pick up Oak's parcel, and then Oak proceeds to hand him 5 Pokeballs, to which he then manages to catch Rattata for Cut right on Route 1, as well as Pidgey for Fly right on the same route. Pretty lucky of him to get these encounters so quick. But things then start slowing down for him as he has to spend his time training in Viridian Forest next, while I'm able to head to Brock. Our first Confusion manages to do just a little bit less than half, as he uses a Defense Curl. But my next Confusion then manages a high roll because it takes out Geodude. Confusion does a little bit less than half on Onix, but then confuses it. Onix manages a Screech as our next Confusion takes him to Red. Onyx fights through confusion again for another screech as the next confusion then gets us the win. Meanwhile, at this time, Speedrunner is still training in Viridian Forest in order to get to level 13 to learn Water Gun. The learn sets in both of the generations are very different. I get Headbutt and Confusion while he gets Tackle and Curse. Curse, while good, is not going to be enough to beat Brock. It just sucks that training is going to be that slow in Viridian Forest, while I am already on my way to Mount Moon. I am currently catching the Pidgey before Mount Moon.
Ah.
Oh my
I'm having
god.
to find in the forest. I don't get Water Gun to level 13, and I'm not fighting Brock with Curse and Tackle.
No. No.
What happened?
This is not happening. This just happened. I used all 9 Pokeballs, didn't catch the Pidgey.
What?
I'm pretty sure I can catch a Spearow right after Mount Moon, but that sucks. That's never happened. That has never once happened.
Spearow have they have a 1 in 3 chance of being caught with a single Pokeball at full health, so that was unlucky.
Not long afterwards, Speedrunner has timed his level up on the Light Years Junior Trainer and teaches Water Gun over Growl. Now that he has the right move in hand, he is finally ready to take on Brock. He knows just how easy this battle is going to be, and doesn't even bother to heal one bit, as Water Gun is able to rinse all of Brock's team. After an annoying trip to the Pokemart to pick up some extra Pokeballs, I am then able to catch a Sandshrew and Spearow, so now I'm finally ready to make an attempt at Misty. I decided that I was going to do Misty because Misty's AI will ignore water moves because of our water typing. It should be a good idea to take her on first. But at the very start of this battle, it's very clear that my headbutt is very overwhelming, so I did not take this into account when I was thinking about how this battle would go. But Starmie's first tackle then manages a crit, and now we're a bit behind the 8-ball as she then uses an X-Defend, which now puts us even further behind because we're doing less damage. If we had just managed to crit even once, we probably would have won. On the next attempt, I then take down Staryu using 3 headbutts just like last time. It didn't even matter that she used an X-Defend. On Misty's first turn, she then uses an X-Defend on Starmie, and now we're going to be very far behind. But what's crazy is, even though our headbutt and tackle war is not going very well in my favor, she never manages a crit, which is crazy for Starmie. Starmie's crit rate is nearly 22.5%, so the odds of us not getting hit by a critical hit in 8 attacks is extremely low. After getting that miraculous win, you'd think I would take the Bubble Beam TM and teach it right away. But unfortunately, I am just not that smart. So we go ahead and head directly towards Champ 2, where we're not going to have Bubble Beam. He then sends out his usual Pidgeotto, and we use Confusion, which ends up doing a little bit less than half. Our next Confusion then manages to get him down to the red, while his Gust does not do much damage. On the next turn, Confusion then finishes him off, which takes us to Abra, where Confusion doesn't do much damage, and then I switch to Headbutt to take it out. On Rattata, we then use a Headbutt that doesn't manage to finish it off, as a Hyper Fang does large amount of damage, taking us to Charmander. Then for Charmander, we use a Water Gun, which almost takes it out, as the next Water Gun then does take it out. Okay, so this is where I'm starting to notice annoying. The higher the level our opponents get, the more we just take unnecessary damage. I hope the amount of potions that I have are going to be good enough to get to Bills. But luckily, I have enough HP, as this game can provide you with 5 potions up to this point, and I usually don't have to use them all. This is so much better than Cloyster.
For me, it's the opposite. Slowbro's worse. That's one thing you could bring up in your video, because Slowbro, I think, started with Confusion for you.
Yes, it did. I am almost entirely using Confusion.
Yeah, I just got it at level 19.
Meanwhile, Speedrunner then hears a strange sound that he's never heard before. It's coming from the Helix fossil. It's saying, "Make sure to subscribe and comment slow and steady." It sounds like sound logic, but Speedrunner's got a date with some black belts right outside of Mount Moon. In Leaf Green, he gets the option to talk to these two guys, who one teaches Mega Punch and the other one teaches Mega Kick. Normally, in Blue, this is just the spot you pick up a hidden Great Ball. he decides to upgrade with Mega Punch over Curse as he needs the extra move coverage and PP to take him through Nugget Bridge without healing. Now, unlike me, Speedrunner decides to take on Rival 2 first, as Misty has Recover on both of her Pokemon and he needs the extra levels for more damage, and to pick up his secret weapon. Unfortunately for him, the Rival is able to land a first turn Sand Attack, but on the bright side, his first Confusion is able to do more than half. The next Confusion then finishes it off. He then sends out Rattata next, which should be a bit of a shock to those of you who watch my channel a lot. He typically throws out Abra next, but because Abra is Psychic type and we're Psychic type, he then decides to throw out Rattata because it has the best shot at taking down our Pokemon. But from here, it really isn't that much of a challenge, as Rattata manages to get a Tackle and a Quick Attack, but one Mega Punch takes it out. Now, of course, the speed might be getting to him, but he decides to use Confusion here despite having Water Gun on his moveset, but regardless, Charmander can't really do much with Ember anyways. And Abra, it can't do anything, which nets him a really easy victory, although he did lose quite a bit of HP. The opponents then throwing out their Pokemon in non-reliable orders is going to be a bigger factor in this run than you think, because Slowbro is one of those Pokemon that relies on setup moves, and if you're not able to reliably set up on certain targets, or you run into a situation where you need to set up on one target but not another, he's not going to be able to reliably do that every time. Meanwhile, I'm getting close to arriving to the SSN.
Anyways, well, now looking at my items before selling them, I realized I have Bubble Beam.
What happened?
I clicked up while teaching the move.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, this definitely got a lot more interesting by teaching over Confusion.
You lost Confusion?
Yes.
Maybe now.
While being entertaining, I forgot about what I was doing. Also, Gen 1 is really annoying because normally you can click up when you're like moving moves around. But if you're clicking up while you teach new moves, it stays up.
Yeah, that's stupid. I know what you're talking about.
The next Bubble Beam then finishes off Pidgeotto. Raticate has some really low specials, so one Bubble Beam takes care of that. I always find myself holding down A going into Kadabra, so I use Bubble Beam, even though I really shouldn't have. Bubble Beam is obviously the correct move to use on Charmeleon, and we get ourselves the win. Luckily, the mistake from earlier by getting rid of Confusion is not going to be detrimental, as we do still have Body Slam and Bubble Beam, which should be more than enough to get us all the way to Psychic in Saffron City. But anyways, we now have to make the choice on where to go next, and I think we should be able to fight Surge, so let's go ahead and give that a go.
Alright, Surge, let's do this. Miss Sonic Boom right off the bat, love it. Alright, I'm paralyzed. X speed. Thunder Shock, okay. Crit Thunderbolt.
But on the next attempt, we then make it back to Raichu with significantly more HP and we're not paralyzed. Our first Body Slam manages to paralyze Raichu and give me the next attack for the win. This earns us a time of 1907. So let's go check back in on Speedrunner, who is now picking up his secret weapon for defeating Misty. That move is Secret Power. And even though Secret Power's power is just a wee bit lower than Mega Punch, its accuracy is 100% and it has a 30% chance of paralyzing, so it's basically a mini Body Slam. So after finishing up a short little chat with Bill, he then makes his way over to Misty and then gets himself prepared for the battle by using a Prism Berry, which is another thing that was introduced in Generation 3. This should allow him to heal Confusion, because Misty's Pokemon both know Water Pulse, which have a chance to confuse. Now, as this battle begins, she then uses Harden, which probably prevent him from getting a one-shot with his Secret Power. But thanks to a lucky paralysis, he gets the next attack to take it out first. Then, for Starmie, he trades blows using Swift and Secret Power, and it takes him 3 shots to take down Starmie. She then gives him a new TM called Water Pulse. It's basically like Bubble Beam, but it has 5 less power, but a 20% chance to confuse. And while working his way to the SSN, he had this to say about Slowbro.
One good thing I'm noticing about Slowbro right here is his moves right in my game have a lot of power points. He's really bulky, so I don't really need to heal that often.
I agree. I have been mostly living off of potions and super potions.
I'm going to get rest in case I need it, because I think Slowbro could take good advantage of it because of how bulky he is.
Very solid observation, as rest will allow us to get all of our HP back, and if we can manage to boost our defense or special defense, it could last so much longer. Which now makes him ready for Rival 3. The rival starts out with his usual Pidgeotto, which then uses a Gust, but our secret power manages to do more than half, to where the second secret power takes it out. Then he starts mopping the floor with the rest of the team as Eradicate uses a Tail Whip, and he finishes it off with a Water Pulse. Kadabra then uses a failed Disable as he takes it down with a secret power. The following Charmeleon then tries to delay the inevitable using 2 smoke screens before finally being taken down with a Water Pulse. Now after obtaining Cut, he is finally able to go and face Lieutenant Surge. However, not before teaching the move that's going to make this battle go from difficult to easy. That move, of course, is Dig. Now, Slowbro has a wide variety of moves that it can learn. You probably saw from earlier that its moveset list is massive, so I didn't want Dig to be in my final moveset. Because if you teach Dig here, you're not going to have Dig for the rest of it if you teach over it. Therefore, so many times where I use Dig on purpose to get out of buildings and save myself lots of time in a speedrun is going to be gone. Who knows, maybe Speedrunner does plan on keeping Dig in his final moveset, or he plans on teaching over it right at the last second. Anyways, he changes out his Persim Berry for a Cherry Berry, so that way he can prevent paralysis one time before the start of the Surge battle. Even though Dig is just a great move, it's still slower than Voltorb, which then hits him with a Shockwave, which then the Dig manages to hit and finish off Voltorb. Followed by Pikachu, which sets up a double team, but to no avail as Dig manages to take it out.
Man, I'm just slower than everything on Surge's team. Hopefully Dig kills the Raichu, and 1 health. I hate you so much. Okay, you're dead now.
Turns out that in Leaf Green, not only did they improve Surge's team by giving him actual good moves, but they also gave him trolley moves too, like Double Team. So now he's even more inconsistent than he was before. Anyways, he clocks in at a time of 26:10. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the gameplay. As you can see, he's walking to Cerulean. Yeah, that's one of those weird things about Leaf Green, as in Blue version, I can just dig, and I dig all the way back to Cerulean. Meanwhile, he has to walk all the way back, losing what appears to be almost 30 entire seconds. In fact, I didn't remember this detail at all. I actually asked Speedrunner, and he told me that in Leaf Green, when you use Dig, it just digs you to the front of the cave. So let's take a look at my splits chart here. You can tell that we certainly took some different paths to get to the same spot. But the thing is, I gained a lot of time by starting with Confusion on my opening moveset. However, some bad luck on my part not being able to catch that Pidgey or Paris in a timely manner, as well as having a slow and methodical battle of tackle and headbutts against Misty put me behind the 8 ball just a little bit, but we still have a pretty decent lead over Leaf Green. And this takes us back to my gameplay, where we're now just picking up Ice Beam and teaching it over Water Gun. Then heading downstairs to pick up 3 Carbos because we're extremely slow, followed by heading east over to Saffron City to pick up Psychic from Mr. Psychic and teaching it over Headbutt. And with that complete, we have finally finished all of our chores, so it's time to go ahead and take on Rival 4. But you already know, he's real easy. So we use an Ice Beam to take down Pidgeotto after taking a Quick Attack, followed by an Ice Beam on Execute, followed by testing out our new Psychic on Gyarados, and all we take is a Bite and Leer. Then for Kadabra, I rely on my overlay just a little too much, as I use the highest power move, which ends up being Bubble Beam, but not the best move, which is obviously Body Slam. And then round things off by finishing off Charmeleon with a Bubble Beam, which allows me to work my way up to the top of the tower, where I reach this Spirit. In Blue version, you are actually able to bypass the Spirit if you rest its soul using a Pokédoll, which allows me to skip the entire first rocket portion of the game, giving me a massive advantage that Leaf Green just doesn't have. Normally, you have to pick up the Sylph Scope by beating Giovanni in the rocket hideout. It's a hot-butted debate whether this is a glitch or an intended shortcut through the game. But both of us typically use this shortcut when we make our other videos, and I thought it was just fine to use it in this race. Anyways, with the Sylph Scope in hand, we make sure to run away from Snorlax, head down Cycling Road, then make our way through the Labyrinth, better known as the Safari Zone, obtain the Surf TM, and then teach over Bubble Beam with Surf. And now with all of our mid-game chores completed, we can finally take on Koga. Coughing is one of the very few Pokemon I'm able to outspeed, and then take it down with a Psychic. Koga then manages to use an X attack as my Psychic doesn't manage to take down Muck. And then, on the next turn, Muck is able to use a Sludge, which does massive damage, where our next Psychic is able to take it out. The next Coughing goes down the same way the first one did. Then, for Wheezing, it hits us with a pretty low damage Sludge, as our Psychic does massive damage, as Koga then uses an X Defend, and our next Psychic gets us the win. Meanwhile, Speedrunner is just arriving in Celadon, and he's demonstrating one of the other differences in the game. He's picking up the T from the Celadon Old Woman. Then he makes a trip to the Celadon Mart where he picks up 2 zinc and 2 protein. And while he is working on the rocket hideout, we're going to be moving on to Erica. She then throws out her traditional victory bell and we use a Psychic.
Oh my god, I outsped the victory bell by 5 at level 36.
Making Erica a very easy victory. The hardest part of this battle is figuring out which move to teach over. I decide that I'm going to learn Blizzard later in the run, so Ice Beam's a good move to pick for now. Meanwhile, Speedrunner, he's just now arriving to Rival 4. Unfortunately, he doesn't have Ice Beam like I did, so he has to settle for Confusion, which doesn't take out Pidgeotto. Luckily, he's got a very high level lead and is actually able to outspeed on turn 2 with another Confusion. Then, for Gyarados, he has to settle for a Secret Power, which got dropped thanks to the Gyarados' Intimidate. Luckily, the next attack does him in. Then, for Execute, he really doesn't have a good decision as most attacks are being resisted, but he goes with the Secret Power, as Execute is only able to manage a Confusion. Then, Kadabra is of course taken down with a Secret Power, and lastly, Charmeleon is taken out with the obvious Water Pulse. While he finishes up Pokemon Tower, I will be moving on to Pokemon Mansion, where I pick up that Blizzard TM that I mentioned earlier. And after a bit of time to reflect on the current situation, I realized that Body Slam has outlived its usefulness. Typically with a water Pokemon, I usually battle all of Blaine's trainers. However, today my Pokemon is just so good and I have better moves coming up that I just decided to skip the trainers and head directly to the man himself. But this one is an obvious mismatch. Surf is super effective, so it's no shock that we take down Growlithe in one hit. Ponyta on the next hit. Rapidash certainly had a chance of being a troll there with Fire Spin, but didn't and used just a Tail Whip. Arcanine definitely gave us a scare with a critical hit takedown, but it's just not enough to stop our Slowbro from winning. The exact moment I get the Volcano Badge, Speedrunner shares this wisdom with me.
Besides, when I beat Sabrina, I'm gonna get Calm Mind.
Oh, that's not in my game.
It raises special attack and special defense by 1 stage, so it's half of an amnesia for you.
So Speedrunner has now revealed his strategy. He's not going to be battling Erica, Koga, or Blaine like I did. He's going to go straight for Sabrina. However, this is going to require him to battle one big hurdle, and that hurdle is Rival 5. But for those of you wondering why he's doing this strategy, just a little bit of a recap here on screen. This is Gen 1 Amnesia. Yes, very broken, probably the best move in the entire game. This is Gen 3 Amnesia. Now you probably see where this is going. Not so good. So while he begins Cycling Road, Safari Zone, and Silphco, I will already be arriving at Rival 5 right now. And with a fully fledged out moveset like this one, I'm going to go ahead and use Blizzard on Pidgeot. Unfortunately, I miss and take a quick attack, which does next to nothing, which takes us to Execute, where we just use another Blizzard and take it out quick. Which brings us to the ever so confusing Gyarados, which I use a Psychic, it uses a Leer, and my next Psychic takes it out, followed by a very weird Alakazam encounter.
Oh my god, Confusion does nothing! Oh, that's great.
Your Confusion?
His confusion did nothing to Slowbro.
Followed by this battle that speaks for itself.
No to withdraw.
Oh!
What happened?
Lost to Giovanni.
A very embarrassing feat, followed by having to go right back to Rival 5 once again. But to add insult to injury, Speedrunner has finally caught up to us, and he is also battling Rival 5 at this very moment. Once this battle begins, I think he starts to realize just how much he screwed up, because he didn't teach some of his new moves yet. So he goes ahead and just uses a confusion and sees how it goes. The first attack does more than half, but mostly thanks to a crit, while the next attack does just a little bit less, and it takes a 3-shot to take down Pidgeot. But now for Gyarados, it starts out with an Intimidate, which lowers the power of his secret power, and the Gyarados is able to take him out in 2 hits. After a brief period of teaching over moves such as Confusion for Psychic, and then teaching over Dig for Rest, he then starts up the next battle, which starts off quite well as his first Psychic attack manages to crit and take down Pidgeot in a single hit. Then for Gyarados, he has the much stronger Psychic attack, which is going to do a little bit less than half, but thanks to a special drop, he's going to be able to take it out in 2 hits. Then for Execute, there really isn't a good move choice. He goes with Secret Power, notices it does very little damage. Then he has to heal back up with Rest, and after 2 turns of waiting, he then can wake up and then use a Psychic move, which does quite a lot more damage than he expected to take down Execute. Alakazam is obviously not going to be much of an issue at all, as he takes it down with a Secret Power. Unfortunately, the first one doesn't do nearly as much damage as he expects, but 2 more Secret Powers later and it goes down. Then for Charizard, we go ahead and use a Water Pulse, and we get hit by a Smokescreen, but it doesn't lower our accuracy enough to miss. However, we then take a Future Sight, a Flamethrower, and then a fully paralyzed followed by another Flamethrower takes us out. And by virtue of skipping all of the gyms up to this point, he has essentially lost a lot of experience that he could have had, that I clearly do have. This is keeping him back just a little bit. He got pretty lucky on some of those battles there. However, when it came to the Charizard, things just didn't go well, and unfortunately the smarter AI in this game was able to do massive damage with Flamethrower, whereas in my game, he doesn't even have Flamethrower at this point. So this is just another one of those generational differences that he has to worry about that I don't, because his Charizard gets both a fire and a flying move, which are both stab and do more damage, whereas my Charizard has only Slash and Ember. Ember, of course, not doing very much damage, and Slash being, even though it's a perfect crit rate move, it's still a fire flying type, so it doesn't get stab on top of it. And on the next attempt, he makes it right back to Charizard, and this time, he manages to get 2 Smokescreens off, but that doesn't affect Water Pulse, as the next 2 Water Pulses manage to hit and get him the win. After 3 attempts at the rival though, I have managed to do a lot during that time. Don't forget, his battles with the rival involved rest, so those battles took quite a long time. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've completed during that time. After that embarrassing Giovanni loss, I then head directly to Sabrina, who I'm expecting to be very easy, because now we actually have a Psychic type Pokemon that does no other moves than just Psychic moves. Because we're so close to a level up, we're not going to use Withdrawal here on Kadabra, so we need to take it down with some Surfs. Unfortunately, Surf only does a little bit more than half, and because it's recovering, it's wasting a lot of our time, until it eventually uses a Psybeam. Then, for Mr. Mime, I go ahead and start setting up some withdrawals, as I'm gonna need the extra special attack and special defense. While setting up, I did notice something funny.
Dude, I've used 4 withdrawals and my speed was only 100.
I died at the Charizard.
I don't know, but I might not outspeed the Alakazam with 6 withdrawals.
Once finished setting up, I then have 131 speed, which is still good enough to outspeed the Alakazam, which is then taken out with a few Surfs. Then it's just a quick fly over to Viridian City, where we take down this cool trainer and we take down this black belt, to finally arrive to Giovanni, while Speedrunner is still taking on Rival 5. Now, of course, Giovanni is going to be extremely easy. We use one surf on Rhyhorn, then for Doug Trio, we're obviously going to be outsped, but he just uses a guard spect, a total Giovanni move. Then we finally get to learn Amnesia, the best move our Pokemon can learn. I don't really think we're going to need it for the rest of this Giovanni battle, so I just go ahead and take down Nidoqueen with a Surf. And it survives on a sliver, but the next one gets the job done. Followed by Nidoking, who he just uses Surf on, as he uses another stupid guard spec. And then Rhydon, with a Surf that has 570 power. Have you ever seen such a strong move? Anyways, Speedrunner is still battling Silphco Giovanni, as we're finally arriving to Champ 6, our final destination before the Elite Four. So for Rival 6, I then start off with a Blizzard. Unfortunately, the Blizzard does not take care of Pidgeot. Luckily, it only knows attacks like Quick Attack and Wing Attack, so I can go ahead and set up with all 3 of my Amnesias, and then move on to Blizzard. With half of my HP still remaining, I then use a Surf on Rhyhorn and take it out in one hit, followed by Execute with a Blizzard in one hit. Then for Gyarados, I use a Blizzard because I can't remember Psychic. But thanks to that level up, we're now going to be outsped, but Alakazam only uses a Reflect and we take it down with a Surf. Then for Charizard, he uses a Rage, and we make it through using Surf. As we finish off Champ 6 and make our way to Victory Road, Speedrunner is finally arriving towards Sabrina. Once he finishes off this battle, he'll finally unlock the move that's going to help him beat the rest of Kanto. He starts off this battle extremely damaged, and this is because he battled all of the black belts in the fighting dojo to the left. This is also why all of his psychic PP is gone, but he can just start the battle with a rest, and this saves him a load of time. Once fully healed up, he can then just use a secret power to take down Kadabra. Unfortunately for him, he's out of psychics completely, so he has to rely on Surf and secret power for Venomoth, neither of them doing a whole lot of damage, and Sabrina doing her best with Hyper Potions to keep her alive. Unfortunately for him, it just takes a load of time. Then for Mr. Mime, he starts off with a secret power as Mr. Mime uses Barrier, and then heals off the paralysis using a full heal. Seeing an opportunity to use Rest, he decides to take it, as psychic attacks are not going to do much damage, and Mr. Mime really can't do anything. Unfortunately, in this game, Mr. Mime knows Baton Pass, and therefore Alakazam now has +2 defense as it uses 2 straight Calm Minds to be +2 in special attack and defense. Luckily, Speedrunner is still able to take it down using a few secret powers. And Mr. Mime is easily taken care of with one more secret power. Finally, with the move that will allow Slowbro to unlock its inner potential, we are finally going to see Speedrunner zoom through the game. But it all starts with Erica. At the beginning of this battle, Speedrunner then starts with a Calm Mind. Finally, with his one Calm Mind set up, he's gonna go ahead and sweep the rest of the team with Psychic. But, unfortunately, he's been paralyzed. Although, it doesn't seem to really make much of a difference because Speedrunner is not going to get fully paralyzed, and his speed is already too low that it didn't even matter. Although, things might be just a little too late, as now I am finally arriving at the Elite Four. I make sure to get stocked up and ready for Lorelei and the rest of the Elite Four, as I'm pretty sure that Lorelei is going to be the most difficult battle of all of them. Take a look at this battle, guys. It might be the most crazy thing you've ever seen. We start off with a Psychic crit, followed by another Psychic crit. Have you ever seen a Slowbro be able to do that? Crazy. Then, for Cloyster, we go ahead and use a Psychic, but of course, Cloyster gets to go first and slow things down. But we eventually do get through after 2 Spike Cannons. Thanks to the level up on Dugong, we can finally then set up with all of our Amnesias. I would have done it on Dugong, however, we were so close to a level up, I just couldn't do it. But anyways, Slowbro only has Water Gun, so there's nothing to worry about here. We get our 536 special and take down Slowbro in 2 surfs. Now that we have 536 special, nothing is going to really stop us, so Jinx gets its thrash in and we take it down with a surf. Followed by Lapras, who we almost take down with a single Psychic, but thanks to a Super Potion we take it down on the next Psychic. I don't know if you guys saw my zoom in there about a minute ago, but now reality has finally hit me as I'm setting up for Bruno.
Okay, well, I'm going to need to solo the Elite Four really, really well, because I have a potion.
Oh, crud, you're at the
A
Elite
Super
Four?
Potion. That's all I have. A Super Potion.
And honestly, it shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, we have good moves for the rest of the league, but as you can probably imagine, a super potion does not go very far, especially when you don't have a healing move. But as far as Bruno, things were taken care of just fine. While you guys continue to think of how in the world is Steve going to be able to solo the Elite Four with one super potion, I'm going to go ahead and pop back in on Speedrunner to see where he is. It turns out it looks like he is already at Koga, making quick work of the game. Then for Koga, you'll notice a strange thing about Koga's moveset. Coughing now has self-destruct, which is very different. Now, of course, Speedrunner starts off with his usual calm mind, but then Coughing uses self-destruct, putting him in a decently bad position for the rest of the battle. Luckily for Speedrunner, the rest of Koga's Pokemon are very slow, and he takes out Muck with a Psychic, followed by the next Coughing with a Psychic. Lastly is the Wheezing, which decides to use a Smokescreen, but it doesn't matter as Psychic then manages to land and get him the victory. With that battle completed, it's time to check back in and see how I'm doing. But Slowbro is going to suffer the same problem that most Pokemon have to suffer against Agatha. It gets put to sleep, it gets confused, it gets Dream Eatered, and it gets Nightshaded. And unfortunately, it's just too much, and we don't have enough HP to hold on. This puts me at an impasse though. I now have a decision that I have to make. Do I continue on and restart with some full restores? Or do I try again to see if I can go through the entirety of the Elite Four? I decide to start over, but unfortunately this decision requires that I black out. And for some reason, Agatha doesn't even want to beat me. She just seems to be fiddling around with confusion moves and sleep.
Are you serious? Dude, her Golbat cannot take out my level 12 Sandshrew. I've hit it with 10 strengths. 10! It's just wasting 2 minutes. 10 strengths.
The moment I get back from blacking out, I make sure to buy my full restores and get started again. We already know the first 2 battles is going to be easy. On the bright side, now I'm going to be 10 levels higher, and I can set up Amnesia on the Dugong like I mentioned before, so it'll be quite a significantly easier battle this time around. Our first Psychic manages to one-shot the Dugong, followed by a one-shot of Cloyster. Then for Slowbro, things will go a little bit more difficult as a Psychic is not going to be good enough, but I rectify the mistake and use a Surf next, followed by using a Surf on Jinx, which takes it down, followed by another Surf on Lapras, which does more damage but still not enough to take it down in one hit, followed by a one-shot sweep of Bruno's entire team, because Bruno is bad, and I'm 10 levels higher than I was before. The only thing that manages to happen during this battle is that Hitmonchan manages to hit me one time before I manage to sweep the rest of the team. And if you're wondering what happened to Speedrunner during this entire process, well, he taught over Dig. So now, whenever he needs to dig, like let's say out of Silphco, or out of the Pokemon Mansion here, he has to then actually walk his way through, which is quite a bit slower, and he most likely didn't buy enough Super Repels, therefore is also going to have a lot of encounters. Anyways, after 2.5 minutes, I finally arrived back to Agatha with full HP, but not full PP because I used some elixirs already. But Agatha is still faster, and she hits me with a Hypnosis and Dream Eater combo, followed by a Nightshade, and then swapping out to Golbat, in which I finally wake up, but get confused and hit myself. Check this out. I don't know if you caught that, but Golbat used Haze, and that removed all of our batch boosts, even the intended ones that the game wanted you to have. You know, from these babies. Anyways, then the next Psychic manages to take out Golbat. Then Gengar manages to use a Nightshade where our Psychic doesn't take it down, followed by the next Nightshade that puts us at a very low amount of HP. Meanwhile, of course Haunter confuses us. Luckily, we take it down with a Psychic. But unfortunately, Arbok manages to use an Acid, which takes us down. On the next attempt, she uses a useless Dream Eater, allowing me to get a Psychic off to bring her into the red, followed by her using a Hypnosis, in which we immediately wake up. Then she uses a Super Potion that allows us to get the Psychic to take her down. Then for Golbat, we go ahead and use a Psychic, but she swaps out into Haunter, which then gets one shot by the Psychic. Golbat then uses a Haze, which eliminates all my extra stats, but it goes down to a Psychic nonetheless, followed by Arbok, which uses a Bite, and then I get flinched. But after the next bite, the first Psychic then takes down Arbok. Then the next Gengar manages to confuse us as we manage to hit ourselves. Then it tries to double up on confusion as Psychic manages to take it to the orange, followed by a Toxic, and then hitting ourselves. But then Agatha decides to throw away the duel as she manages to use a useless Dream Eater, followed by a Psychic that manages to hit. Meanwhile, Speedrunner is finally pulling up to his first gym leader in which feels like ages. However, it's only been 3 minutes. Boy, time flies when things are getting rough. But this is just Blaine, so we don't really need to worry too hard. He goes ahead and sets up Calm Mind as he gets hit by 2 bites in a row. Then he uses a Surf and takes down Growlithe. Then for Arcanine, he uses another Surf and one-shots Arcanine as well. Ponyta is next, and it decides to use a Bounce that manages to actually paralyze him before going down to the next Surf. But now at low HP and paralyzed, he can do nothing but watch Rapidash take him down with a Fire Blast. On the next attempt, Speedrunner then makes the realization on how he lost that first battle.
Oh, that's why it's got Bite. That's why it did so much.
Oh, because you have to worry about Dark versus Psychic.
So on the next attempt, realizing that he can't avoid all of the bite attacks, he then uses a rest on Ponyta and makes sure that he's ready for the rest of the battle, in which Rapidash uses a Fire Blast, doesn't do very much damage, and then Surf gets him the win. But little can be done to win this race because I am now fighting Lance, and with Blizzard on my moveset, I can't see this possibly going wrong. In fact, I don't even bother to set up on the Gyarados, partly because I'm close to leveling up, but also because Gyarados is the strongest member on his team for me to face. So he uses a Leer, which allows me to do a large amount of damage with Psychic, followed by another Leer, which allows me to do even more damage with Psychic. But then the kicker happens next, as he uses that Leer, which allowed me to actually outspeed him on the third hit and use a Psychic to take him down. From here, things will just be simple. We use a Blizzard and take down Dragonair. I'm naturally able to outspeed the second Dragonair and take that down with a Blizzard. And then Aerodactyl gets a Hyper Beam crit, which we managed to survive and then take that down with a Blizzard as well. Dragonite decides to make things close by using a Slam that nearly takes us down, but we get the victory in the end with the next Blizzard. And as much as I'd like to say that Speedrunner is caught back up again and battling Giovanni, he just isn't. So we're going to be moving on to the champion. I then use my final rare candy so I don't level up during this battle. I get a Blizzard out on Pidgeot and take it down in one hit. Then for Alakazam, if you take a look at its moveset, you'll notice something really strange. Yeah, that's right, it doesn't have any moves other than Psychic moves, so I made a realization.
Would you believe this, but I set up an Alakazam. That's the first time I could ever say that ever. I set up my Amnesias on Alakazam.
And from there, I'm relatively fast, taking down Rhydon and Exeggutor in one hit, followed by Gyarados in one hit as well, followed by Charizard, who just locks himself into Rage as we get the win with Surf. But the run doesn't end here. Let's go ahead and move on to Speedrunner to see how the rest of his game is going to play out before we get to our end of game analysis. When we last left off, he was just defeating Blaine, and now he's just finally arriving to Giovanni. Normally, Rhyhorn is just a crap Pokemon, only having Fury Attack. However, his has Earthquake, but it stands no match to his Surf. Dugtrio is next, and it does a surprisingly low amount of damage with an Earthquake. But it doesn't matter because the next Surf takes it down, followed by Nidoqueen, who uses an Earthquake, followed by getting taken down by a Surf, and then Nidoking, who uses an Earthquake, followed by getting taken down with a Surf. And I guess they removed his Rhydon, because Rhyhorn is next, and it gets taken down with a Surf as well. Now, with all of the Kanto badges in hand, as you can see in the bottom half portion of the screen, it is time to move on to his final rival battle. Speedrunner then comes to the same conclusion that I did, as Pidgeot does not have a good move to use against him, so he sets up his 3 Calm Minds and then takes down Pidgeot. Not having a good move for Execute doesn't matter, as the Surf is able to take it down in one hit. And then, of course, he's able to take down Rhyhorn in one hit. Being able to actually outspeed anything with the Slowbro is surprising at this point. And then for Gyarados, he uses a Surf, which Psychic probably would have done just a little bit more damage and left him at a sliver, but you know, you learn. And then by the time you get to Charizard, you start noticing just how much chip damage he's actually taking. And even though he takes it down in one hit, he goes into Alakazam at 42 HP. Then the rival is able to pull off some crazy stunts as it uses Disable to disable the surf that he was actually going to be using during that turn. But for those of you who don't know, Disable has changed over the years, and this is Gen 1 Disable on the left and Gen 3 Disable on the right. If you will notice, the first line of the move has changed. Now the last move gets disabled. So that made Alakazam be able to disable the Surf that was used on Charizard, and then when we selected Surf again because Psychic wasn't nearly as good, it got disabled because we were slower. But why did I go on a tangent explaining why disabled his move, essentially making him lose a turn? Well, because the opponent crit and he lost. But also because on the next attempt, the exact same thing happened. But he missed, and therefore the Surf managed to hit and he got himself the win. With every single obstacle out of his way, he is finally ready for the league, and he's got his final moveset as he doesn't need to learn anything else for the rest of the entire league. Also, knowing that Lorelei is not going to be a big challenge allows him to save his rare candies for later on in the league for when he needs it. Another one of these Gen 3 changes is just how long the intros and animations are in this game. I know that the Elite Four is obviously going to be special, but if you do have a lot of resets, those animation times are going to start adding up. Anyways, Speedrunner spends the entirety of the beginning of this battle setting up on Dugong, as Dugong is not really going to be much of a threat, as it sets up Hail, and then when he's fully set up with all 6 of his Calm Minds, he gets ready and starts to attack Dugong. And of course it's a one-shot with Psychic. Lorelei then throws out Lapras next, which is able to paralyze him with their first Body Slam, as his first Psychic is able to one-shot Lapras. Cloyster is not really seen as much of a threat, so he spends his time to make sure and set up with Rest, as now that he has all 6 of his Calm Minds set up, it's going to be very easy to tank the hits from the rest of her Pokemon, as none of them really have any super effective moves. Once fully set up, he can then just take down Cloyster with one single Psychic, which then brings out Slowbro next. He then uses Surf, which almost knocks out Slowbro, and this moment is going to make the difference in this run, as her Slowbro then uses Yawn, forcing Speedrunner to then use Rest, which cancels out the Yawn, but now she then uses a full restore and gets right back into this battle. Because now, while Speedrunner is asleep, she's then able to set up 2 Amnesias, and because Speedrunner's best attack is Surf, this is going to be resisted, and now this battle's going to take forever as she has got 3 Amnesias now and fully set up on defense. Meanwhile, both of them chip away at each other with some Surfs until Lorelei finally uses another full restore, making this battle last even longer. After trading some more Surfs, Speedrunner then switches to Psychic to hopefully get a special drop, making the difference in this battle. Getting a little bit carried away and also fearing for just how long this battle is going to last, he then takes down Slowbro, but leaving himself at 29 for Jinx. Jinx is then able to outspeed and use a Lovely Kiss to put us to sleep. He then takes 3 more Ice Punches before then getting hit by an Attract before he finally wakes up. Luckily, he gets by the Attract check and goes to sleep. From here, things should be pretty darn simple as he's got all of the time in the world, because now all he has to do is just wake up and use some Surfs to get himself the victory. Unfortunately, Jinx is not going to take this loss without putting up a pretty darn good fight, because as soon as he wakes up, Jinx then starts using some more Lovely Kiss attacks, so that way he'll still be asleep while she gets her chance to use some more Ice Punches. After 3 times waking up and getting by the Attract check, he finally manages to get a Surf and one-shot Jinx. For a battle that should have been extremely easy, the Slowbro and Jinx just threw a wrench in every single plan. And this is just one of the differences in Gen 3 because the movesets are just so darn trolly. Now let's go ahead and see if Bruno in Gen 3 is going to be as easy as it is in Gen 1. It starts out simple enough as he takes down Onix with a single Surf. Meanwhile, Speedrunner then has an epiphany as Hitmonchan then comes up.
Yeah, I forgot to make myself female for this to prevent Attract from Jinx.
It's always difficult to remember every single factor of the game. Meanwhile, Hitmonlee also doesn't go down in one single hit from Psychic, which becomes a real problem as this forces Speedrunner to then use Rest, but unfortunately, Rest is not going to do him a lot of good when he can't survive 3 whole turns. Meanwhile, on the next attempt, his Psychic does take out Hitmonlee in one hit, so it is a range. but then misses the opportunity to use rest as he takes down Onyx with a surf, as Machamp then outspeeds and takes him down with a cross chop. On the next attempt, Speedrunner then explains to me why it is so much more difficult to beat Bruno in this version than it is in Pokemon Blue.
Because when they made the special split, they gave the fighting types way better special defense.
Well, right, because they were getting one shot by literally everything.
Now hopefully Agatha will go just a little bit smoother, but who am I kidding? I mean, it's Agatha, alright. He takes a moment here to realize that he doesn't need to set up and uses Psychic on Gengar. Of course it uses Double Team first because it's faster, but luckily he gets the hit in, which leads Agatha to use Golbat next, and he decides that he wants to use Psychic once again. She uses a Bite which does critical hit damage, but he takes down Golbat in one hit. In this version they actually gave Arbok options to attack with, although Sludge Bomb still doesn't do a whole lot, as he takes it down with a Psychic. This then leads him into the next battle with Gengar, which then just promptly uses a Shadow Ball and takes him out. This battle is then easily solved by one special thing. All he really needs to do is set up. A little bit easier said than done, but once he gets it all totally set up, the next Gengar is then easily dealt with and we move on to Haunter. Haunter then does most of the work for him, as it just uses a curse to lower its HP by half, when the Psychic then finishes it off. It's starting to feel like every battle in Gen 3 is just trying to figure out how the jigsaw puzzle is put together, because every battle seems winnable, but just not on the first attempt like it is in Gen 1. I'm generally curious to see how Lance's team fares compared to the Gen 1 Lance. The strategy that he goes with is a very safe one. He decides that he wants to set up with Calm Mind. Here's the problem. Gyarados has Dragon Rage, and with 40 damage, it's going to do a lot of damage. But it's not going to do enough damage to the point where he has to get worried, so he can just use rest, take a bit more damage, and then set up a few more times. Once he has all 6 stats boosted, he can then finally take down Gyarados with a Psychic. From here, things are pretty simple, as he can take down Dragonair with a Psychic, followed by the next Dragonair with another Psychic. But he gets a little bit greedy as he takes down Dragonite with a Psychic rather than using rest. The greed does not pay off, as Aerodactyl's first move is a Hyper Beam. Turns out though, that Gyarados is not as easy of a setup target as it was the first time. I don't know if it's beginner's luck or not, but Gyarados eventually does take us down after 4 setups with Calm Mind with a Hyper Beam. On the next attempt, things go pretty awry, as the Dragonite is then able to take us down with a Hyper Beam crit. Of course, the next attempt is still not going to go well, as you gotta remember, we have to set up all of these Calm Minds on every single attempt, so it's almost a minute wasted on each attempt as we get taken down with a Hyper Beam, which obviously targets our defense, which is not what we're boosting. Eventually, we finally get to this attempt, where we make it to Aerodactyl with pretty decently low HP, but luckily, he doesn't go for a Hyper Beam this time, and we finally get the win with one shot of Psychic. Speedrunner then uses up the rest of his rare candies for this final champion battle to make sure that he's absolutely prepared as much as he can be for this battle, because it could be difficult or it could be really easy. It really depends on how the setup is gonna go. The first battle with the champion has begun. He spends an awful long time figuring out which move to use, and he eventually decides to go with Psychic. Unfortunately, Pidgeot then uses a Sand Attack, and then switches out to Executor. Executor then uses a Sleep Powder, followed by a Light Screen, and after that, it really is game over after he uses a Giga Drain, followed by another Giga Drain. On the next attempt, things go quite a bit smoother, as he's able to finally set up all 6 of his Calm Minds. He then has to remember which move was better to use against Executor. Unfortunately, the answer is neither. And unfortunately, he just keeps on falling to sleep, and every single time that he gets an opportunity to actually attack, he then needs to fall right back to sleep on purpose, because he needs to get his HP back. Luckily, he finds an opening after using rest twice to finally take down Executor with a Surf. Then back to Pidgeot, as he takes that one down with a Surf as well. Which brings us to Alakazam, which gets very lucky with a Psychic crit, taking us down all the way to 49 HP thanks to a crit. But still no match for a Surf. Rhydon is going to be obviously outsped and taken down with a Surf. Last and certainly not least is Charizard, and because he doesn't want to take any risks, he sets up with a Rest. And then after a few attacks of Aerial Ace from Charizard, he wakes up, uses a Surf, and gets himself the win. With that, I finished the game at level 63 with 58 real time, 345 game time, and 4 resets, while he finishes the game at level 64 with 122 real time, 412 game time, and 12 resets. We both certainly had a few things to say after the run. Let's go ahead and play some live footage.
I think Slowbro just felt a lot more bulky than Cloyster did. Like, the higher HP was really good. I think the special defense was also better than Cloyster's. Having access to Calm Mind while Cloyster didn't was extremely helpful. I was just setting up and just power housing through everything. I remember Cloyster had to be like level 67 for the champion, and I had to have a bit of luck on my side. Slowbro was able to do it at a few levels lower, although the champ fight did take a lot longer with rest.
I think there should be a calculation out there on defense and special defense versus HP, because for instance,
it's 95 base HP.
Double defense is only good if you have half as much HP. So that's how it kind of translates. So for instance, if a Pokemon has 200 defense and 100 HP, then it's going to be equally as good as the Pokemon who has 100 defense and 200 HP. But the thing is, that's just not how it works out, because Slowbro's got, I think, over 100 defense and significantly more amount of HP. So it does better with what it has, statistically.
Its HP and defense stats is almost the same.
And we're not even talking about special. We're only talking about regular defense. Extra HP makes the special just that much better. After playing Muck and playing Vaporeon, I now understand why people think these Pokemon are a tank, because of the HP. I had no idea how valuable HP was until playing these Pokemon.
I thought Cloyster was bulky. After playing it, I'm like, its HP is only base 50, and it feels like it just has 100 defense instead of 200.
Yeah, I mean, defense only goes so far when opponents are using special, and then you don't get to use that defense. Now, with Slowbro, I really felt that it was exceptionally slow compared to things I've played on the channel, but at least it was able to tank hits. Like other Pokemon like Weezing that were also exceptionally slow were not able to tank hits because of their HP. And even though Weezing had absurdly high defense, it wasn't able to deal with the hits like Slowbro was. The greatest strength of Slowbro was it neutralized Alakazam completely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Normally, every single Pokemon, no matter what, including Alakazam itself, struggles with Alakazam. Like Alakazam itself, the other opponent's Alakazam will use Reflect to stop your dig, and then you're in a recover battle, and it will waste all of your PP. But this is the first Pokemon that I have ever played with, that includes Mr. Mime, that had no problems whatsoever with Alakazam. And I think it has something to do with amnesia and HP.
I wasn't struggling at all against Alakazam. I fought Sabrina as the 4th gym leader. I can just use a physical move on her Pokemon, and then when I needed to, I could just use Rest, because her Pokemon could not do much to me at all, except for the Venomoth, which had Leech Life, but one Psychic would kill it. I think the worst part of the run for me was definitely Lance. The champion I won first try, because he has some Pokemon I could actually, set up, Calm Mind and use Rest, because if I had a few Calm Minds set up, I can set up on Exeggutor because the AI knows Giga Drain wouldn't do much, and he'll just use Egg Bomb, which doesn't do that much.
Well, with everything completed, it's finally time to crown ourselves the winner. The winner is obviously me, with Pokemon Blue. Pokemon Blue obviously had a much easier time throughout the entire game. Not only that, it also had skips that just made it so much easier. That means Speedrunner is going to have to play Smeargle in Leaf Green. There's no timetable to when this challenge is going to be completed, but it will be completed at some point. As far as rankings, there are not going to be any rankings on this video. I will be doing a versus video in the near future that's going to have rankings at the end. As far as the follow-up videos to this one, expect in the upcoming weeks that we're going to be doing a Lugia in Gen 2 video. That video is going to be special, as all of the Pokemon in the entire game except for wild Pokemon are going to be shiny. Then, of course, there's going to be the Cloyster vs Slowbro video in the distant future. After that, I have a few more videos that I want to get worked on, but another collaboration is coming. So keep an eye out for that one. I want to give a big thanks to all my patrons on Patreon, especially my new Mewtwo tier patron, Wired Squid, as well as Speedrunner0218 and Malfever. please consider liking, subscribing, and becoming a patron yourself. Also, consider clicking the video in the top right where I play Pokemon Blue with only Metronome. I can't imagine anybody would be disappointed after clicking on that video, just because randomness is always fun. Until next time, thank you guys for watching.